Okay, we are back. Um, a little late in the day. Things are a little dark in here, but I think you get the idea. In some ways, uh, it's, a dark mood on this set is probably appropriate. So, uh, yeah, we're going into a dark place today. Not that all of my other videos don't go into a dark place, but I gotta tell you, um, the more I see and the more I watch what's happening in the world, and the more I think about this, the darker and bleaker it gets. So yeah, we're going there. Last time I did a video, unfortunately, there was a technical problem. The audio got cut off at some point, so I had to go back and truncate the video. But I'm going to continue that theme. It was really too much to put into one video anyway, so it's probably just as well. It was probably the universe telling me, hey, "Shut up! You're getting too far deep into this for one video. Go back and make another one." So here I am. And my audio is working. Let's see how long that continues. The last time I was talking about triage, and I'm not going to really explain that here. If you don't know what triage is, realize this is part 2, so you can go back and watch that other video. Basically, put simply, triage is the responsibility of making tough decisions about what you can keep easily, what you cannot possibly keep, what is already lost, and what you could salvage if you worked really hard. It's an idea that comes from the battlefield, where large numbers of wounded soldiers would come in from some sort of a campaign into a field hospital, and there would have to be a team of doctors and nurses who would evaluate who gets immediate care. If someone, in a different situation, an urban car crash or a fire or something, probably you'd bring everybody and you try to treat everybody, even the people who seem like they're going to die. You just bring them in, you try to treat them, try and save their life. But on a battlefield where maybe there's hundreds of people coming in at once, you really can't do it. Your facilities are too small, and if you're not careful, then you'll lose people who could have been saved had they gotten the treatment they needed when they could have taken advantage of it. So triage is, and I'll explain how that applies to civilization. Triage is, you have to identify, and this is a decision. This is a hard decision. It's a tough decision. In other situations, you wouldn't make decisions like this. It might even be immoral. Could even be illegal. You could end up being thrown in prison for making decisions like this, on deciding someone can die and someone gets treatment. That would be a terrible quandary. But when you're in a disaster, when you're in a disaster, you're in extremity, you have to make choices. You have to make choices. You have to make choices. And these choices can be very difficult, but you have to make choices anyway. Okay? Well, the idea of triage is you're going to make rough choices right away. And someone's wounded, you'd like to treat them right now, but they're probably going to be okay for a little bit. So let's put them over here on this side, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Another group of people coming in from the battlefield are so wounded that they're almost certainly going to die. So we're just going to give them comforting care. We'll be with them when they pass on, and we're going to put them over here on this other side. And then there's a group of people who are coming in. They're not slightly injured, so they don't go over here. They're not mortally injured, so they don't go over there. They're somewhere in between, and they could go either way. And so these people you want to treat. You want to treat them, because if you don't, you're probably going to lose them. They will become fatalities. Otherwise, if you treat them really a lot, you set the bones, you get the shrapnel out, you cauterize the wounds, then they can go over here with this other group and heal. Okay, so you do the triage. Now, we are, in terms of civilization, how this applies to all of us, not on battlefields. We are in an emergency. We are in extremis. Okay, we are in an extreme situation. We are facing an existential crisis. And when you're in a crisis, you have to call it a crisis. We are in a disaster. When you're in a disaster, you declare a disaster. So that's how it is. That's where we are. And if you don't think we're in a disaster, then you're not going to be able to make heads or tails of what I'm just about to say. It's just not going to make any sense to you. But if you accept that we are in a disaster, then you might actually be a little bit alarmed that we aren't seemingly making any moves to deal with a disaster. If there was an earthquake and no one ever came to help you move the rubble and dig out the bodies and take care of the injured, you'd say, what, you don't think this is a disaster? We just had an earthquake. All the buildings fell down. This is a disaster. Where's all the help? Okay. And yeah, so you have to recognize there's a disaster. The problem with global heating and climate change is that, and those are separate things, by the way. The problem is our world leaders are not really declaring a disaster. Why? Because they know what would happen if they did. They would have to start making painful choices. They would have to engage in triage. They would have to start answering hard questions. They would have to start taking a lot of pressure. And they don't want to make those decisions. They don't want to decide who goes forward, who gets treatment, and who is left to die. They don't want to make those decisions. They don't. They're not strong. These are weak people. Your leaders are weak people. You're probably a weak person. Who was born ready for this? Who was born ready to be a triage doctor or nurse? You have to have special training. You have to go to school and learn how to make these hard decisions. Who among our leaders was trained to do triage? Who among our leaders was born to manage, charismatically manage and lead the people into the wilderness of disaster? Who among our leaders? Pick one, anyone. Even go into the past. Okay, maybe you can find characters like, Winston Churchill, possibly, maybe. I mean, he kind of rose to the occasion, right? Maybe in the current political climate, you could maybe say Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine, possibly. He seemed to have risen to the occasion, right? He could have fled, could have said, I can't deal with this. Bye. I'm a comedian. I'm an actor. Goodbye. He could have done that, but he didn't, right? He kind of rose to the occasion, and he's sort of been leading his people through this disaster of being invaded by Russia. But really, do you think, look at your landscape. Do you think your political leaders and your educators and your philosophers and your bankers and your corporate titans, Elon Musks of the world, do you think they're going to lead you through a disaster? Seriously? No, you're fucked. Okay, you're on your own. You're on your own. You are. And that's why that's why you're panicking. All right, because we're in a disaster. They're not saying we're in a disaster, and they're not leading, and no one's saying the thing, and you're kind of wondering, so what am I supposed to do? I don't see any help coming over the horizon. It looks like we're going to have to go it alone. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to. They don't want to do the triage. They don't want to decide who's dead because of global heating and climate change. They don't want to decide which communities to abandon outright, leave them to their fate. Like, for example, the southern third of Florida. No one wants to abandon the southern third of Florida. That's some of the most expensive real estate on the planet. No one wants to abandon Southern California, the lower third of California, the Los Angeles area, and the greater metropolitan area. No one wants to abandon that. It's completely unfeasible without fossil fuel inputs. It's completely ridiculous. It's just a desert and scrub down there with some great ports, right? And so that's their claim to fame. They got some great ports on the Pacific side. But other than that, what do they got? They got nothing. And they consume fossil fuels, and they rely on it for every single thing they do. And so we're going to have to abandon them. That's going to be lost. No one wants to talk about that, how that's going to be lost. They don't have water. They don't have food. They don't have anything except great ports on the Pacific Ocean, which mattered a lot back in the day when there were sailing ships, and that was the only way that you could land is at a port. Well, now that's not what we do. That area is going to be lost. We're going to have to do some triage. We're going to have to abandon that place. We're going to have to abandon the lower third of Florida, maybe even most of the state. We're going to have to abandon all of our coastal cities because of sea level rise. Pretty much inevitable. I hear all the time new reports coming out of Antarctica and the Doomsday Glacier and the melting in Greenland. And they're always saying, oh, well, this one could lead to 7 meters of sea level rise, and this other one can lead to 3 meters of sea level rise. And here's another one that could do 20 meters of sea level rise. And no one ever talks about what that really means. 7 meters of sea level rise, to put things in context, is about 24 feet of sea level. And that just destroys almost everything coastal. Our coastal communities would just have to be abandoned. It's like a 24-foot wave came in, a 24-foot tsunami just came in and didn't leave. It just comes in, it doesn't leave. It just stays right there, 24 feet. And, it takes everything out. So no one wants to have this discussion about what we're going to have to give up. And there are things we are going to have to give up quickly. We already know what's going to happen because of sea level rise. And it doesn't matter if it takes 10 years or 20 years or 50 years. In the larger picture of how long it took to build these communities and how hard it's going to be to move these people and build new communities for them and whole new economies and rejigger their entire lifestyle, it's like the blink of an eye. The time we have to do that. And we either, and in the realm of triage, we would either have to relocate those communities now, save those people now, or give them up. Give them up for dead. Either do it right now or give them up for dead. They're done. They're done right now. They're done already. They're done. They're done. Doesn't matter when they're done. They're done. Soldier comes in from the battlefield, terrible wounds. We can't really solve these wounds. We don't have the right equipment to do this. He's got so many wounds. It's going to take a huge surgical team. We don't have a large surgical team, and we're just going to wheel him over here. And if he's still alive in 6 hours, maybe we'll have people free to fix him. But right now he's going over here into the makeshift morgue, and we'll come back in 6 hours and see if he's still alive. That's what these communities are. They're dead. They're dead. No one wants to say that. Now, just because a community dies doesn't mean the people die. The people can be moved. Ta-da! But if we don't make that decision and we don't do it right now we're going to make that decision. Right now we're going to do it. If we don't do it right now, then we won't have the 10, 15, 20 years in which to do it. And who knows how high the sea level is going to rise. If the planet becomes ice-free, and various calculations, how much sea level rise there is, but it's about 270 feet of sea level rise. My house, right here where it is, in the South Bay area, is at 81 feet of sea level rise. So in the event that all the ice on this planet melts, my house, my lot, is under 200 feet of seawater. 200 feet of sea level. It's 200 feet of sea water. And that's that would be the entire California interior valley, probably from, I don't know, Red Bluff all the way down to Los Angeles. There's some mountains, transverse mountains down there and whatnot. So those will be sticking out of the water. But everything in between, 1,000 miles, will be under 200 feet of water. Somewhere in there, there's a coastline, right? Somewhere in there, there's new beachfront property. And if you're lucky enough to be at 280 feet of sea level, 280 feet above sea level today, then you'll be 10 feet above sea level whenever the sea level rises 270 feet, if that's the actual number. So where do we move people? If we're going to leave these communities, then where do we move them to? And no one wants to talk about that. So they're not going to. No one wants to talk about what happens when we give up on fossil fuels because of these problems, you see. If we give up on fossil fuels, then we have a whole nother set of problems. It's almost easier. It's the trolley problem. My wife just learned about it recently, and it's a real problem. And it's why I have no hope of anything substantive happening. I have no hope because of the trolley problem. And the trolley problem, you can look it up. It's a classic moral dilemma problem, and there is no answer. It's a moral dilemma, and it's a problem. You just have to put yourself in that position so that you can think about it and recognize your own limitations as an actor. Okay, and the scenario is something like this: You're on a electric trolley, and the brakes aren't working. Of course, it's completely fabricated, right? You're a driver of a trolley, and the brakes aren't working, and the track goes up here, and there's also a side track that goes this way. And on the track ahead of you, there's 5 people tied to the rails. It's a terrorist act. And you're going to run, if you keep going straight, you're going to run over those people and kill them. Over here on the other side, you could switch the rails, right? And you could go to the other side, and you say, okay, I'll avoid this. But on this other rail, there's like a child tied to the rails. There's 5 old people tied to the rails up ahead of you, and there's a single child tied to the rails over here. So you have to choose. That's the trolley problem, right? It sucks, but that's how it's framed. And do you go forward and kill these 5 old people, or do you say, oh, well, I would kill fewer people if I drove on the sidetrack. Oh, but that person's a child. That person has a chance at life. And these are older people. They've already lived their life, and so this is less of a dilemma. But now I'm choosing. I have to choose to kill these 5 people, or to go forward, or to take a sidetrack, and I'm choosing to kill this one person. And what they've discovered is that most people simply don't choose. I'm not making a choice. It's not my problem. And why do they do that? Because you can walk. Your own moral imperative is that by not choosing, you walk away in your own mind free of all guilt. And the reasoning is you didn't tie those people to the rails, and you didn't tie that child to the rails. And it wasn't your fault that the brakes failed on the trolley. And so if you just throw up your hands and just cross your arms and say, I'm not going to make a choice. Someone else has to make a choice. It's not my choice. Don't put me in this situation. I don't want to hear about it. Then when you run over the 5 people, and you can say, okay, that wasn't me. I didn't do that. They just happened to be on the track that this trolley was on, and I'm folding my arms and I'm not doing anything. It's also tied in with something called the bystander effect, where, and this happens all the time. A person is being mugged. A woman is being raped. Someone's being pistol whipped, okay? Someone's being run over by a car. And there's all these people standing around going, huh? What's going on here? I don't know. I'm not going to get involved. Why would I want to get involved? I could be thrown in jail for getting involved. I might make the wrong decision. And if I just stand here and look, then I'm not involved. I didn't do anything. I didn't do nothing. I just didn't do. I didn't do nothing. I'm just standing here. I'm not doing nothing. I'm standing here, not involved. So don't tell me I did nothing to help that person, or to stop the crime, or to save that person. I'm just here. I'm just here. It's a bystander effect. I'm just here. And I'm here with all these other bystanders, and they're not doing anything. So we're not doing anything. Don't tell me what I did. Don't tell me that I chose not to help. No, I didn't do anything. I just stood here. And so, and you kind of detect that there's a disconnect with reality here. And what these examples and what these moral dilemmas tell us is that humans would rather stand around and watch a disaster. They'd rather, and wait for someone else to either come along and fix it, or find out who's to blame and punish them, or take the blame, or whatever. And they would just rather stand there and just observe. They just would rather do that. Now, a big enough disaster, I think, triggers something else in people. It triggers an instinct for self-preservation. It's one thing to be standing on a sidewalk in New York and watching a man beat a woman, down into the gutter, and you're just like, well, doesn't involve me. Okay, I'm not doing anything. I'm not even not doing anything. I'm just not engaged. I'm not here. I'm a fly on the wall, or I'm watching this on a video. I mean, I'm not here. I'm on the sidewalk, and they're in the gutter, so I'm not involved at all. I'm not doing anything. I'm not engaged until there's a big disaster, and then all of a sudden people get engaged. So if there's a big enough disaster, in the interest of self-preservation, that you are the person in the gutter being pistol whipped, okay, then you choose to preserve yourself. And maybe you'll ally with other people, or you'll pull together as a community, or you'll help dig people out of the rubble, or you'll take up arms against a shared enemy, or whatever it is. But if it's a small thing, then people will just morally just disengage. Now, right now, climate change and global heating, global heating is the physical phenomenon. Climate change is what results from it. And climate change is an umbrella for, what, fires, floods, heat waves, drought, all the things. Okay, that's all under climate change. It's all driven by global heating. So right now, people see global heating as a what I call an SEP. It's an SEP. Global heating is an SEP, someone else's problem. So there's a bystander effect. When you see someone being pistol whipped in the gutter, and you're not even engaged enough to not do something. Okay, that's bystander effect. And right now, global heating is an SEP, someone else's problem. So we are so poorly engaged that we're not doing anything. We're not even engaged enough to not do something. Do you see? We are suffering bystander effect. Now, global heating is global. How else can I explain this? This is not a situation where you want to be suffering from bystander effect. And you also really don't want to fall victim to the trolley problem, where you're just going to cross your arms and just, look the other way. You see? Because to some extent, you are also tied to the tracks, right? It's not a good reference because we are all tied to the tracks. And the trolley is global heating, and it's coming down the tracks. We are all tied to the tracks. And we can stop burning fossil fuels, which puts us on a certain sidetrack. There's a bunch of people tied to the tracks. Or we can continue to burn fossil fuels and we keep going on the track we're on. And there's a bunch of people tied to the tracks. And that's the problem, right? That's the problem. And people don't want to choose. They don't want to choose. But we are in a disaster. We must engage in triage. We must decide. Now, our current crop of leaders don't want to do that. For us as individuals, as groups of people, we have to do that. We're not going to get any leadership from these useless sacks of shit. They are just going to cross their arms, and they're not even going to engage enough to not engage. That doesn't make sense, does it? They are going to walk down the sidewalk reading their newspaper and not even look to see who's being beaten in the gutter. They're just going to read their newspaper and walk down the street. Look at their cell phone and walk down the street. They're not even going to engage enough to be disengaged. We are literally being thrown under the bus. Now, some of these elites will not find themselves under the bus. They are the elites. They can manage, right? So they are not in the same position that you or I and our neighbors and our offspring and our friends and our family and that we are all in collectively. The elites way up there living on Mount Olympus live in a different world. Now, they may turn out that they make some disastrous choices too. They may end up insisting that they're going to live in Malibu. They're insisting they're going to have their mansion on the hill. And it's pretty high up the hill and the water's way down there. And I'm not worried about sea level rise. Hell, water's 300 feet down there. Meanwhile, in actual Malibu, at the actual cliffside, their homes are eroding into the sea, even as we speak. Fact. So they can make bad decisions too. They can make bad lifestyle choices. They make bad life choices. They can make a bad decision. They could end up living someplace that is the first to go, right? Well, we assume the elites are just going to walk by. The elites are going to walk by and they're going to leave us to make decisions. What are our decisions? We are in a disaster. Therefore, the first decision we have to make is the realization that we have hard choices. Hard choices. None of you are ready for hard choices. Not morally, not ethically, not technologically. You haven't got the education for it. You haven't got the philosophical underpinnings. But here it comes. Here it comes, coming your way, going to sweep you up and drag you into the land of hard choices. And what in your comfortable suburban life ever prepared you for that? And what do those hard choices look like? So this is where I play triage. I'm the triage doctor. I'm the triage engineer. I am the triage scientist. I have special training. I have decided that I can do this job. I have thought long and hard in the dark, well of my soul on how to do this and what it's going to cost me to do this and the difficulties I'm going to have doing this. And I have faced it. I am ready to make hard choices. Let's see if you're willing to make hard choices. I'm going to make some hard choices here. I'm going to do some triage at the civilizational level. I'm going to make the hard choices. You see if you can follow along. And if you can't make these choices, then you're not ready for this. Okay? You're not ready. You're going to be a bystander. You're going to cross your arms and you're going to revert your eyes and you're just going to walk down the sidewalk while all that other bullshit is going on. And you're just going to la-di-da-di-da. Or you could join the rest of us making the hard choices. So what are those choices? Well, some of them aren't actually a choice. The first choice is not really a choice. It's more like something we have to do. It's more like, well, we got to do this. All right, let's do this. Let's do this together. Let's have a good stiff drink, have a good laugh, sing a song, and then let's do this. All right, we're going to do this together. I'm going to support you. You're going to support me. After it's done, we're going to support each other. And we're going to have a stiff drink and we're going to go out and do this. What is this? We are going to stop burning fossil fuels. It's a hard choice. We are going to stop burning fossil fuels. Now, my wife and I have this argument all the time. Bless her heart. We're both hippies, but I'm further down this road than she is. And she says, well, you stop burning fossil fuels because it's the right thing to do. You do it to save the habitat. You do it so the children don't get asthma. You do it to save the birds. You do it to save the bees. You just stop burning fossil fuels. You grow your crops organically. You don't use pesticides or fertilizers. And we, the air becomes clean and the water is clean and the fish are swimming upstream and the birds are flying and the butterflies and the monarch butterflies. And that's why you stop burning fossil fuels. I say that's fine. That's fine. Go right ahead. It's a good thing. It's a beautiful thing. We're going to stop burning fossil fuels. I'm going to ride a bicycle. I'm going to buy organic vegetables and I'm going to live my life fossil fuel free. I'm going to feel great about that decision. Okay. And I say, okay, fine, do that. But the real reason that you wean yourself off of fossil fuels as a first step, as a first decision, okay, from which the disaster emerges, through which we will survive by applying a series of triage decisions, okay? The first decision is to give up on fossil fuels. Now, here's why you give up on fossil fuels. If you don't care about the butterflies, you don't care about the asthma, and you don't care about the fertilizers, there's still a reason for you to give up on fossil fuels in your personal life because they're going away. There you go. They're going away. And why are they going away? Because burning fossil fuels adds CO2 to the atmosphere and methane through other reasons. And this contributes to an enhancement of the greenhouse effect, which we also call, through other words, global warming. And global warming melts the ice, changes the habitat, causes climate change, causes other forms of disasters, rains, floods, snows, droughts, fires, okay? And eventually, all these things cause a collapse of civilization. And if you give up on fossil fuels personally, then when someone comes along and says, well, that's the end of fossil fuels because of all these other things that are happening over here, okay, but you've already given up on fossil fuels. So when they say, well, we have to stop burning fossil fuels, then you're going to say, oh, yeah? Oh, that's fine. That's what you're going to say. Oh, okay, that's fine. But you should be upset. No, I'm not. Why? You can't drive. Well, I don't drive as it is. I grow food in my backyard, and I work with my neighbors. We have a community garden. We collect rainwater. We have, electric vehicles, some of us, and I have a walkable community. I have a general store over here, and I have a healthcare provider over there. We've got a little schoolhouse for the children over here, and the elders are staying in this elder community right across the street, and we have everything we need right here. We don't use fossil fuels for much of anything. We appreciate the water coming in, we appreciate the electricity coming in, but we personally don't use fossil fuels. So if you're going to cut off the fossil fuels, and that means, what does that mean? So I'll say it together: no driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no movement of money, no jobs. Well, that's okay, because we've already made those steps, and that's why you do it. That's why you do it. I mean, you might do it because it's the right thing to do, but you might also do it because you're preparing yourself for the day when there's no fossil fuels, because someday there will be no fossil fuels. Why? Because day has to come. That day has to come. Why? Because that's the solution to global heating. To avoid excess global heating, you have to stop enhancing the greenhouse effect. And to stop enhancing the greenhouse effect, you must stop emitting excess CO2 and methane into the atmosphere. And to do that, you must stop consuming fossil fuels, which means you leave them in the ground. You don't dig them up and do something clever with them. You just leave them in the ground. That's it. You're done. You're done. That episode is over. That was fun. That was an interesting 300 years. But now it's done. Now it's done. So that's the first thing. That's what we have to do. And I'm confident that will happen. And that will happen. That will happen. Okay, be careful here. Be very careful. Yes, that can happen because the governments of the world, all 193 countries or whatever, get around, smoke some pot, hold hands, whatever, and they decide, and they get a big decision to turn off all the fossil fuels. Just go to the oil fields and turn off the pumps. They're electric. Just turn them off. Clunk, a switch. You're done. Go to the coal mines, and that's all electric equipment down there. All the drilling equipment, all the buckets hauling the coal out. Go to the coal mines, pull the switch, clunk. All that electric equipment stops. And go to the fracking fields and find the fracking machines out there in the middle of all the pastures in Oklahoma. And they're electric. Just turn them off. Clunk. Okay, turn it off. Just turn it all off. Just find every place. Go to every pipeline, every transfer station. Clunk. Turn it off. Leave it in the ground. That's it. You're done. You can do it that way. Or if we don't do it that way, then that way is done to us. And this is very simple. Okay. A lot of this equipment depends on ready supplies of electricity, supply chains for special equipment, computers and pumps and all kinds of valves and all kinds of equipment that's manufactured overseas. And as we fail to act on global heating, some of these countries will begin to experience disturbances caused by, the usual gang of idiots, right? The floods, the hail, the fires, the tornadoes, the cyclones, the droughts, the whatever, okay? And people will find it increasingly difficult to do the daily thing. And the people that used to work in the oil fields will find it harder to work in the oil fields. They get hot. It's sunny. It's 160 degrees Fahrenheit out there. And then there's a valve that breaks. And I don't want to go out there. I'm in the air conditioner, here at the control station, and I see the red light on the board, but I'm not going to go out there to fix that valve again. It can just stay broke as far as I'm concerned, because it's 160 degrees out there. And if I go out there, I'm going to die. Just like the last guy who went out there to fix that stupid valve, and he died. So I'm not going to fix that valve. And I have to fix that valve. You're going to hold an actual gun to my head. You're going to stand there with a gun at my head telling me I have to go fix that valve at 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, I'm not going to. So go ahead and shoot me, or I'll just go home. Okay. And so no one does the work anymore. They can't, because it's too hot, or it's under 20 feet of water, or they haven't had food for their family recently because there's been a drought and there's been a war and there's been something else. And the food insecurity has gotten to them. And now they spend most of the time at home trying to comfort their wife and their children and their spouse and their elders, and their community is starving, and no one wants to go to work. And I don't need a paycheck because I can't buy food because there isn't any. So now they're scrambling around trying to find food. They're protesting, they're rioting, and or they're finding some ground and they're putting some seeds in the ground and they're trying to grow food, right? Because they can't find food. And so if I can't find food, I'm not going to go out there in that oil field and fix that stupid valve, because I'm home with my family trying to find food. So if we choose not to turn off the fossil fuels, nature and the universe will conspire against us. Eventually, life will become so attenuated that the entire system begins to crumble only under its own internal contradictions. The fossil fuel industry was born during periods of abundance. It grew during periods of abundance. It plateaued and spread over the planet. Oil fields everywhere, coal extraction everywhere, natural gas pipelines running all directions during abundance. And that abundance was itself caused by fossil fuel consumption. And without all that abundance, it begins to collapse. Without all that money, it begins to become unfunded and bankrupt. Without all that consumption, it has no markets. And the price of oil could go two directions, and it might even go two directions at the same time. In one regard, they have no customers because people can't get to work. They can't get to the market. They're barely surviving. They're making hard choices in their lives, and they're not dealing with the economy anymore. So consumption falls through the floor. Or at the same time, and this could happen at exactly the same time, the price of oil goes through the roof because these companies have fewer customers. And so now a barrel of oil costs $1,000 because they need the money. They need the money to keep drilling the oil and bringing the coal and the natural gas. So there's fewer customers because people are operating in extremis, and so they have to charge more for the product they put out. So they have lots of money to go get more. So you might see two trends: people using no oil and natural gas and coal at all because they're just barely surviving. They're growing their own food. They're not driving anywhere. They don't have jobs. The economy has collapsed, and yet the price of oil is $2,000 a barrel because the oil companies did the money. So at some point, it just collapses, you see. And if we don't do something to save ourselves from that fate, then we collapse along with it. All right. And so it's just like a disaster. It's just like an earthquake. It's just like a tsunami. We get hit with this thing. We weren't ready for it. They're not going to help us. We have to make the hard decisions as individuals and as communities. We have to make the hard decisions. And one of the decisions you can make right now is to get off of fossil fuels so that when it is gone, as it someday must be, then you won't be out there scrambling around trying to fix your life because you have already made the decisions to give up on it. And that's why you give up on it. I mean, maybe you give up on it to save the unborn gay whales, and maybe you give up on it to save yourself because it has to go away. Now, as with any other disaster, people, if we can avoid the bystander effect, which of course we cannot because that's human nature, but at some point the disaster becomes so huge that you're not watching someone being beaten down in a gutter. You are the person being beaten down in the gutter. At some point, the disaster is so enormous that there are no bystanders. Everyone is swept up into it. And now you have a whole nother series of decisions to make. And these are very hard decisions. These are very difficult decisions. And on some fundamental level, it comes down to who gets to stay on the island and who does not. And what is the island in this situation? It's similar to the situation on the Titanic. Those people were making hard decisions in extremis at the last possible minute. And the decision was who gets a lifeboat. And we're kind of in the same situation. We are going to be thrown into the water. We are going to be in a position where we have to start making lifeboats. We have to start figuring out how we're going to endure. And this is going to be hard. Nobody's ready for this. Nobody can do this. Can we really survive at all? Just seems impossible at 10 degrees C. Besides, gardening, what? Buy 3 years of canned goods? Okay. It's a legitimate question. Thanks, Stuart. It's a legit question. What can we do? What can we really do? Let me tell you something. Let me set the stage for answering that question. Let me set the stage. I've said this before in videos. I will say it every single time. Everything you have in your life is dependent on fossil fuel inputs at every stage. Everything you eat, everything you drink. This glass of water comes from a reservoir 800 miles away through channels and pipelines and through transfer stations. There's a massive amount of technology, and there's filtration systems, and there's pumps, and it's all run with electricity, and there's computer systems that manage the whole thing, and it's distributed down the middle of my street into my home to get a glass of water. This lighting, this computer monitor, this microphone, this keyboard, this table, the wood on the floor. I built this floor out of wood, but this wood came from a sawmill. And the wood was delivered from a forest to a sawmill to be carved up. And later on, 100 years later, because this is recycled wood, 100 years later, I used it to build this floor. But I had used power tools, and it's got varnish and varathane on it. Everything about this floor is fossil fuel related. Everything, every single thing. Everything you eat, everything you see, everything you touch, every technology you interact with on a daily basis, or even once in your lifetime, every surgery you've ever had, every classroom you've ever sat in, every teacher you ever learned from, every time you took a phone call, every time you read a book, anything you've ever done in your entire life was based on continuous, constant fossil fuel inputs. Every morsel of food you have ever eaten, unless you grew it in your garden in the backyard. Now, it is a true statement that you can plant a seed in your backyard, water it a little bit, not even much, and it will grow into a plant that will give you hundreds of seeds, and you can eat them. Now, that does not mean you have saved yourself from dependency on fossil fuels. It doesn't. It's a start. Okay, it's building. What I like to say is it's building capacity. You're building knowledge, and you just learn something. You take one seed, put it in the ground, you get 100 seeds, and you can eat those. And you plant different types of seeds, and you not only get other seeds, but you get fruits and vegetables and root vegetables and leafy greens, and you eat all this stuff. And so you learn something that people used to know from birth, which is that how to raise your own food. And you can do that. You can do that in your life right now. Build capacity. Learn how to grow food. And and when you learn how to do that, other people come along and say, "Oh, you're growing your own food. How nice. How do you do that?" Because they've been thinking, "How am I going to survive without fossil fuels?" And here you are planting food. And it's not much, it's a little something, it's kind of fun, it's a little hobby, but now everyone's thinking about planting food, and pretty soon lots of people are planting food. And that's how it gets started. And you do it because you want to have fresh food in your backyard, and the kids like it, and the neighbor kids come over and eat the tomatoes, and they're happy, and you like to see the neighbor kids eating the tomatoes. It's fresh food. And that's why you do it in this fall. And then one of these days in the future, when we stop burning fossil fuels and everything comes crashing down because we had to do that, well, then you've got a garden in your backyard, and all of a sudden that garden's looking real nice. Wow, I did that. I have food in my backyard. It's not much, but it's a start. And there's even more of my backyard I could devote to gardening if I got out there with an axe and a chainsaw and a shovel and got rid of all the stupid ornamental plants in that gazebo and tore up that turf and filled in that stupid useless swimming pool. I could plant all kinds of things back there. And I, tear up the concrete, tear up the asphalt, and tear down the patio. I don't need to sit on that patio and just find the dirt under everything. Find the dirt, bring the dirt in, replace the dirt. And you could just fill your backyard with plants. And what if your neighbors were doing the same thing, filling their backyards with plants? And what if you were filling your front yard with plants? See, you could make that choice right now. You could make that choice. It's a hard choice, but it's something you could do. There's lots about our civilization that in the absence of fossil fuels is simply going to go away. And you can't stop that. These are the mortalities. These are the things that will arrive on your doorstep that are so damaged by the absence of fossil fuels that they are effectively dead. And what are those things? I can tell you what those things are. I've already said it once in this video. I'll probably say it 3 more times in this video. The things that will arrive dead on arrival on that day when the fossil fuels are shut down, or after that terrible month, or after that terrible period when the fossil fuels gradually grind to a halt, the things that will arrive at your doorstep, DOA, into the morgue, straight to the morgue. Maybe we can salvage them later, but today, right now, they're going to the morgue. The DOA, the things that arrive at your doorstep on that day are, you will see that nobody will be driving, flying, moving goods, moving money, or having a job. Now, if you think about that very much, that sounds like the end of the world. Well, no driving, no flying, no moving of goods. You mean like groceries and Amazon Prime and yeah. And gasoline deliveries to the service stations. Those are goods, right? Sneakers, food, everything. Shovels to the Home Depot, right? Fertilizers, seeds, all of it. It's all moving goods, okay? And no movement of money. Yeah, your bank account. What happened to the banks? The banks are gone. There's no money. You couldn't even buy the goods if they were moving around. It's all done, right? It's done. It's finished. The money has disappeared. They took the money and they said, bye, Felicia, and they just disappeared with the money. You know they're going to do that. There's not going to be any money moving around. Your bank account's going to empty out. And even if you had $50,000 in your mattress, okay, what are you going to buy it with? No one's going to want your shitty money. They're going to give you seeds for money. They're not going to give you a shovel for money, any amount of money. Have you not seen the disaster films? What's the first thing that loses its value completely? Money and gems and 70-inch TVs. You can't give them away. You leave them in the streets. Nobody cares. And what's the most valuable thing during a disaster? Shovels, picks, wheelbarrows, okay, seeds, heirloom seeds in particular, and cooperating with your neighbors. That's the most valuable thing. You don't even care about that guy with all the money. He's got his Tesla and his Lamborghini, his Ferrari, and he's got his big McMansion over there, but he's useless because he won't come outside and help. He's up there living in his Lamborghini up on the hill, and he's not helping. So he's useless. Forget him. He's of no value at all. He's got the biggest house. He's got the most expensive car. He's got the most money in his bank account. He's useless because he won't help. That's how it works. That's what happens. That's the decisions we're setting up for. And the guy living up on the hill, he's useless. Doesn't matter if he's a movie star or a titan of industry. He's a waste of time. He won't help. And all that money turned out to be useless. But the person with 3 shovels in their garden shed is suddenly the favorite person on the block. They got 3 shovels, right? And the people with skills who can repair things and build houses and run plumbing and run electricity. And I mean, assuming we even have those things, right? Maybe we don't have anything of the kind, but maybe people who know how to use solar power and how to install batteries for the solar power and how to repair small equipment, small engines. Maybe they become critical members of your community. And the people who can buy those things because they have a lot of money are of no value at all because money has no value and we're not moving goods anymore. And forget your job. Just forget your job. In the absence of fossil fuel inputs 24/7 hours a day, days a week, you're not going to have a job. You're worried about the price of gas and whether you can get gas for your car because now you have to get to work and then you go to work and then the doors are closed and there's a chain on the door and they're saying, out of business. When did that happen? Well, that happened when the fossil fuels start. They got no business. What were they doing? They were selling software? Why? No one wants your fag software anymore. What else are they doing? Are they real estate developers or something? No one cares about that. No one cares about that shit. Forget it. You're not developing real estate anymore. Yeah, forget that. There's no money. No one wants to buy your stupid real estate. No one cares about, you make baseball mitts or something. Who cares? Sporting equipment. No one cares. We're not going to do that anymore. You don't work for a sporting company anymore. You don't work for a sneaker company anymore. No one cares about those things. You have a shovel? Do you have 3 shovels? Okay, yeah, you're my best friend now. That's what happens in the absence of fossil fuels. And then what happens is uh, you have to start, you have to decide what you can keep and what you have to let go. Now, the things that will arrive at your triage tent, that will arrive DOA, dead on arrival, or again, must be repeated: driving, flying, moving goods, moving money, and having jobs. Those things will arrive DOA. They go in the morgue. There's going to be a whole nother set of things that arrive in pretty good shape. You probably won't have to do anything. You have your family. And it starts that way. It starts very local. You have your family, you have your clothing, you have your home that you live in. Okay. You got your clothing, your shelter probably is okay-ish for at least a little while. And you got your family. One of the things that ties into this is be where you need to be with who you need to be with, so that on the day when they decide no more fossil fuels for you, you don't have to look around and say, oh my God, my kid's in college in England, my kid's in college in Australia. What am I going to do? There's no flying, there's no driving, and now they're far away and I'll never see them again. And the cell phones all stopped working because, no one's managing the cell towers, and the cell phone companies went out of business all at the same time. And now I can't even get a dial tone and I can't call my kid in Australia. Okay. Or my elder is living in a care community, 400 miles away, and gasoline is not even available, and it's $50 a gallon when it is, and I can't go 500 miles to go get my mom-in-law or my grandparent, then bring them here. They're too far away. I guess I'll never see them again. And I can't call them on the phone. I can't give instructions to the staff. They don't want to talk to me. Hell, the staff isn't even there anymore. The staff left. They've got their own people to take care of. They're not going to take care of these elders, these old people who they were paid money, okay, jobs, and they don't have those anymore. No one's paying them to take care of these old people. So your old person is fending for themselves. They're not where they're supposed to be. Or you're not where you're supposed to be. They're over there and you're over here, and there's another bunch of people over that way, and you're all scattered, and you talk to each other on the phone, except now you don't, and you go to visit each other on the holidays, except now you don't, and you're having anguish, and you're weeping, and you're gnashing your teeth, and you're rending your garments, and it's like, how'd this happen? You weren't where you're supposed to be with who you're supposed to be with, okay? And these are the decisions we have to make now. We have to do these things now because it's going to be very difficult. Okay, it's going to be very difficult. And what I'm saying is that one of the things you probably won't have to fight for, that you will probably have and probably will be okay for your purposes, will be clothing and shelter. There'll be a lot of clothing around, and there'll be plenty of shelter. You've got a home right now, of course, unless I don't know why you'd be listening to this video if you're homeless. Okay, so you got a home right now, you'll probably be okay. We have water. I don't know. Maybe water is able to be maintained, and sewer treatment, which is the other end of water. Maybe that gets worked out, and maybe the sewage continues to go away. But that means that someone is doing triage. Someone has decided that you can't make this decision because you have no control over utilities. But somebody out there in the government, let's hope they got their shit wired up tight. Someone in the government is deciding that, okay, our role is right now to make sure that there's electricity to the homes and businesses. Well, forget the businesses. They're done. They're toast. They're DOA. Electricity to the homes, water to the homes, and that we have sewer treatment. Okay. Let's make sure we can do that. And if we can't do it all the time, let's make sure we can do it on a regular basis somehow. We're going to keep people on staff. I don't know how we're going to pay them. It's not a job anymore. It's an obligation. We've got to do this, people. We've got to do this. Swear an oath right now that you're going to continue to do this, that you're going to continue to go out there and fix the broken water mains, and you're going to continue to make sure that the sewer gets treated, and you're going to make sure the electricity still runs at least part of the time of the day. Just swear to me. I'm the mayor, I'm the governor, whatever. Please help us do this. Okay? We still are dependent on these things. So if some politician makes the tough decision, and they get enough people together, and they get them all together in one place, and they talk to them, and they give them the speech, and they say, I need you to swear a vow. You're the only people who can do this. Please, please, please help us. Keep it working. Keep it working. Well, then in your home, you will have, your utilities. for a while, right? For a while, you can manage that for a while. Then you'll go to the tap, the water comes on, ta-da, and you flush the toilet. It disappears into that magical place, ta-da, and you've got electricity. You can have lights. You can do some other things. And maybe if there's enough electricity, and maybe if the cell phone towers don't need a lot of maintenance, well, then you can make cell phone calls. And if even if the international communications don't work, well, then you can still at least communicate locally. Maybe you can communicate 400 or 500 miles to talk to your senior living in a senior facility someplace. I don't know what else you can do for them, but you can talk to them, right? Maybe we can keep some of these things working. We can keep pounding on this, provided that the governments come along and do the bare minimum. Will they do that for us? I don't know. I just don't know. It's going to be hard when the fossil fuels run out, or when the fossil fuels, they don't run out. Okay, that's not the peak oil is not the problem, folks. When the fossil fuels are turned off, why would you say that? Because that's what has to happen. But why would they do that? That would be a disaster. It doesn't matter. The other disaster is we don't stop global heating. And then we have another set of problems, and then they turn it off after the bigger problems come. We either do it now or we do it later when things are even worse than they are now. Okay, it's just going to have to happen. I don't know who makes that decision. I hope they make it soon. I hope they give us time to adapt. That's the conversation we're not having. We're not having that conversation. Have you noticed? Have you noticed? I've noticed. We're not having that conversation. And even people who are in the know about, all the problems with global heating and all the problems with climate change, even those people who really understand, they won't talk about it either. They just won't do it. I'm doing it. I know how bad things are. I know how trapped we are. Yeah, we're fucked. Oh, man. Oh, baby. You are in trouble. Okay. You are in deep trouble. You are up to here in trouble. It's time to make the hard decisions. And the things that will arrive at the triage tent when the fossil fuels stop or when they start to grind down, the things that will arrive DOA, dead on arrival, will be driving, flying, moving goods, moving money, jobs. That stuff is going away. That there is no way that can continue. That is dead. Get that out of your life. Start moving yourself away from those things, because those things are going to die. And if you are attached to those things and you can't survive without them, then you will perish. And a lot of people will. A lot of people will, because either they couldn't get out of the way or they waited too long. You have to start thinking about a world without fossil fuels. You need to have that conversation with yourself, with your family, with the people you care about. You need to have everyone where they need to be, with who they need to be with, so that they can be focused on survival. And you can fix that. Your family, your friends, your circumstances is not dead on arrival. You can fix that. In fact, those things may be fine right now. You may be in a position where you have the people nearby that you want, that you're in a good neighborhood, that your family is not scattered all over the planet, that your children are nearby, that your elders are nearby. You may be in a really good place, in which case you can kind of not worry about that. Maybe you have to have a conversation with people about how important it is for everybody to stay where they are, stay close, okay? But you're okay. Phew, that's a relief. There's no driving, there's no flying, there's no moving of goods, there's no moving of money. And I lost my job, and she lost her job, and everyone's lost their jobs. But you know what? Phew, we've got each other, right? We've got each other. You can fix that. You can fix that. But you have to fix it. Because if you don't fix it, then it won't be fixed. It may not be fixable. And then there's going to be a bunch of things in the middle that possibly, if you work hard, could be saved. If our governments work hard, could be saved. If we thought ahead and planned ahead, there are things that we're doing now that seem like they're also going to be dead on arrival if we're not really careful. But we could save them. We could keep them going forward. What are those things? I just alluded to some of that. Electricity to the home is really important, I think, for a lot of people. That's your cooking, that's your water heating, that's your lighting. For some people, it's medical equipment, right? And even lighting and things like that could be really important. If only just to keep the spirits up, that you feel like there's a light in the darkness. Electricity, just to have lights at night, or during cloudy days, you have lights. Also, water delivered to the home. Indoor plumbing is an amazing invention. It's a miracle, frankly. And indoor plumbing is clean, right? A lot of us already have filters in our near our sinks, so we can have clean indoor water. There's no wells in your community. You don't have a well that you can lower a bucket down in and come up with water. You don't have that. So you're reliant. People used to have those kind of things. Every farmhouse had a well. That's how it worked. You dug a well, you put a windmill above it to pump the water out, and you filled up a barrel, and you had troughs for the animals, and you had water. Came right out of the ground, right there, 20 feet from the house, water out of the ground. You don't have that going on. You need the city and the county and the state and whatever to keep the water working. And you're hoping they will do that. And you're hoping that they're making plans to do that. You're hoping that happens. Well, we could make sure that happens if we make plans for that. But we have to make those plans now. Do you want running water? Plan for having running water. What's it going to take? Same thing with sewer treatment. And you can even extend this to availability of food and other basic goods. Where's your food come from? Well, your bananas come from Ecuador. Well, that's not going to work. Okay, what else do you have? Well, the strawberries come from, downstate. Oh, that might work, but probably not. Okay, so what do you have growing locally? Well, we don't have much, actually. I go to my local market here, and I look at all the stuff on the shelves, and it's all manufactured, 4 or 5 states away, or foreign countries, or the plants don't even grow in the United States. The plants grow in the tropics or someplace else, and everything on the shelf at the store, it's all manufactured. There's not going to be anybody manufacturing anything. I've got a stone mill for making flour out of wheat berries. Now, you can grow your own wheat. You can do that. Are you ready to do that? I'm not ready to do that. You aren't either. But the state could be ready to do that. Aha. See, there's something they could do. The state could do that. Well, I live in California, so literally the state of California could do that. We could grow wheat. And, we could harvest it. Well, if you don't have combine harvesters, how do you harvest wheat? Well, maybe you do it the way they used to do it. You have a scythe, and you have a threshing floor, and you have silos to put the wheat up, and you do all this stuff. And then you put the wheat in sacks, and you distribute the wheat. And if anybody has a wheat mill, flour mill, you can grind it into flour, and you can do things with flour. Making bread, making tortillas, whatever. Right? But you can't grow wheat, but maybe the state can. Is the state ready to grow wheat for people and distribute that to the people? I don't know. My first guess is they're not. Could they do that? Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They can figure that out. Sure. It just takes money, political gumption, right? Willingness to take chances, willingness to make decisions. They could do it. Will they? No, but they could, right? They could. And that's what triage is about. Triage is about these things here's a bunch of things that are DOA. Oh my God, no fossil fuels. Okay, well, these things are done, right? Driving, flying, moving goods. Okay, that's all done. Forget all that. And there's a bunch of things that are going to be fine. My clothing and my shelter, my family, we're fine. We're together. We're healthy. We're pulling together. We're a team. We're going to be okay. And then there's a bunch of things that it would be nice if someone could figure it out. Can we figure it out together? Can we figure it out as a community, as individuals? Maybe you installed solar panels on your house, and maybe you have batteries, and maybe you've got, electric appliances in your house. So you kind of already figured that out for yourself, right? You could do that. Now you have electricity. That's going to be handy. Maybe. Does it work without the grid? Well, if it works without the grid, meaning you've got some batteries or something, well, then yeah, you're good. And maybe you could update it to work with the grid, without the grid. Okay, well, then that's a project you could do. So you've got the solar panels, you've got the inverters, you've got the charging controllers, you've got the batteries, you've got all the wiring you need, you've got all the electric appliances you need, right? Heating water with electricity, cooking with electricity, air conditioning and heating with electricity. Oh, I would never do that. It's so expensive. Solar. right? So you've got your electric lighting, your LED lighting, and you're kind of okay-ish. And you got your family nearby, and they're okay-ish as well. They're kind of okay. You've got your electricity. What else can you do for yourself? Well, you can tear up your backyard, tear out all the ornamental plants, and tear up the turf, fill in the swimming pool, whatever else you have to tear up the patio, get to all that dirt and start working the dirt and start planting food. You could do that. And if all your neighbors do that, well, then you've got a narrative. You got something you can talk about. Hey, we're all gardeners. We're all growing food. Well, you had real successes with zucchini. We can all do zucchini now. We can make zucchini bread, and we can lay up zucchini for later, and then we'll have our winter crops, and we'll have our summer crops, and our spring crops. And we're not the only neighborhood doing this. There's other neighborhoods that also are planting, and so we can actually have a farmers market. Wow, imagine that. So every day, probably every single day, people have an excess of food show up at this market, and we barter and we trade and we do all these things, and there's no money involved because there's no money. No one has a job. No one has a bank. No one has an account. We just show up with all of our excess produce, and some people have eggs, and some people have zucchinis and other plants, and someone's been making flour. How do you make flour? You got a mill? Wow. Where's the wheat come from? Oh, you got that from the government surplus? Well, that's amazing. I didn't know you could do that. Well, it wouldn't do me any good because I don't have a mill, but you do. So you're bringing flour. Well, that's really great. Someone has flour. I've been needing flour. Flour is amazing. And what else can we get? Oh, look at all this cooking oil. Where'd that come from? The state delivered it. Wow, I didn't know they were manufacturing cooking oil. They're collecting that from around the country. It's in kind of weird containers, but hey, I'll take it. It looks like used containers to me. What is this, a soda bottle? Yeah, but hey, it's full of oil. I'll take it, right? And you can use the oil for cooking, and you can also use it for illumination. If you have oil lamps and things like that, you can. That's the best use for it, but you could, right? You cook your food with it, and preserve food with oil, right? And maybe we can grow olive trees in our community here. We have the right climate for it, so maybe we plant orchards of oil trees, olive oil, and maybe other types of orchards, just huge orchards like an acre. And then we have the olives, and then we could plant vineyards. We have the grapes. We could do these things. These are things we could do. These do not arrive. These do not arrive on the day of the end of fossil fuels. These things do not arrive DOA. Driving, flying, shipping goods around the world, everybody having a job, all this money flowing through the system, that all dies. And you may have a narrative, we could do this and we could do that, electric airplanes and green hydrogen, and we could do some other things, and we can. No, you can't. No. If I thought you could save those things, I would have said so. I'm the triage engineer. I'm the triage scientist. I'm here to tell you, no, you're not doing that. Those things are going to be dead on arrival. And you're going to find out that they're dead on arrival. I'm here to tell you that shit's gone. That shit's dead on arrival. If you're planning on that, you're going to cling to that. That's what's going to save you. Oh, well, it's nice knowing you. What can you do? And there's something else you can do that you could do that will not be dead on arrival. And this is maybe the most important thing. And I've already kind of skated around it. You can create a community. Now, this is not politics, and this is not survivalism. Everyone's got an AR-15 and 1,500 MREs, and they got their bunker, and that's not what we're talking about. Not a community of individualists. We're really talking about what happens during a disaster. People come together. Okay, you don't have a bystander effect when everyone is being beat down, when everyone is being run over by the bus. When everyone is under a pile of rubble, you don't have a bystander effect. Everybody's engaged. And so you can create a community around that. You can create a community around a disaster when you couldn't create a community around politics or ideology or anything else, okay? You can create a community around a disaster, and even perfect strangers, people who you don't care about, wouldn't say hello to on the street, walk right by, will suddenly become your best friend. That's how it is. And people who get swept up in great disasters will tell you things like that. They'll say, I never knew my neighbors. This just happens all the time. It's like a meme. It's like it just happens all the time. I never knew my neighbors until the fire came and burned half of our houses down. I never knew my neighbors. I never talked to my neighbors. I didn't even know how many kids they had until the hurricane tore the roof off all our houses. I didn't even know my politicians. I didn't know what they did until they started showing up with food and medical supplies and relief, and started pulling people out off their roof with helicopters and swift boats. And I didn't know any of this stuff was available until it just showed up one day. And a disaster will do that. And there will be an opportunity that this is at scale. This is human scale now, okay? In the same way that bringing your family under one roof is human scale. In the same way that growing food in your backyard is human scale. Humans can do this. Tearing up the sod in your front yard and growing plants, that's human scale. You can do that with a shovel, right? It's just a little bit of work. And if you have small children, they would love to help, and they get all excited about it. And you can do that. It's human scale. But the other thing that's human scale is how humans circle their wagons. And they do this naturally. They do it because they understand instinctively that a big enough disaster threatens everyone. And there's no bystander effect. No one's walking by with their fingers, with their arms folded, averting their eyes to the terrible thing that's happening in the street. They are the ones being beat down. Okay, we're all beat up by global heating. We're all beat up by climate change, and we all have to pull together. And I guess it was Benjamin Franklin who said, "Well, gentlemen, we must hang together, otherwise we will surely hang separately." You're going to have to pull together. You're just going to have to do it, and you kind of have to have faith that will happen. It can happen. It's human scale. It's natural enough. People report this happening in their lives all the time. It probably hasn't happened to you. Certainly hasn't happened to me, but I've seen people do this, and I know that people can do this. Now, a hurricane or a fire or an earthquake or, something else, these are temporary disruptions, and people pull together and they literally pull each other out of the rubble. They literally pull each other out of their collapsed homes. They literally help each other rebuild their homes. And people do this, and then the disaster, it's fixed, solved. FEMA comes in, the government comes in, the money flows in, the food, the construction materials, and pretty soon everything's fixed. And maybe the friendships and the camaraderie continue after a while. They probably do, right? Sure, why not? But people move around, right? And then there's new people in your neighborhood, and they don't even know that this terrible thing happened. Okay, so that's a temporary disaster. But global heating is not going to be a temporary disaster. Climate change is not a temporary disaster. You know how long this disaster is going to last? Oh, I don't really know how long it's going to last. But my guess is thousands of years. Maybe forever. How long does a species survive? Hundreds of thousands of years before it goes extinct, right? 1 million? The changes we're making to the planet now easily last hundreds of thousands of years. Easily. You and I, unless you happen to be 90 years old, you and I will live to see changes happening to this planet that will never be reversed. Never be reversed. It's a continuous disaster. Oh, well, and it also gets worse. Oh, and it changes. It's one type of a disaster this year, but it's a different type of disaster next year. And there's going to be places, interiors of continents, for example, that will become uninhabitable. Dry, barren, dusty, uninhabitable. There'll be places in continents like the coastlines that will become uninhabitable. They'll simply be underwater. Or the storms will be coming ashore, and the erosion and the waves and the hurricanes and the winds and all this just beats you to death. It just destroys everything. Every year, year after year, just destroys everything. Waves and tsunamis and all this crap destroys everything. You can't live there anymore. You got to leave. So we don't even know where the habitable zones are going to be. We don't even know. Every year is going to be another disaster, another group of people finding out, oh, well, I guess we can't live here. Where should we live? I don't know. Let's go try over there. No, I think we should go try this other direction. I don't know. They're having their own set of problems down there. Well, we can't go that direction because it's cold up there. Well, maybe it's not going to be cold anymore. All right, we'll go north. All right, we'll go east. People will go places and it'll be the wrong decision. They'll go right into a different disaster, completely unprepared. Or they'll head one direction and they'll meet a whole nother group of people coming their direction. And everybody's thinking they were going to a better place. And what they realize when they pass each other is, I guess it's not very good that direction either. And with that kind of constant crisis, people are just going to have to come together. And where this is going to lead slowly, and it doesn't have to be slow because you can anticipate it because of human nature and the need to survive. Where all of this is heading is a very obvious place. And because you can anticipate it, you can plan for it. Because you can plan for it, it's human scale. You can do this with your family, with your neighbors, with your friends, with people you don't even know yet. You can do this. It's human scale. And what I'm talking about is village life. You can create a village. You can create a resilient group of people who work together, who know each other and trust each other implicitly. They absolutely trust each other. There's no question that these people are reliable. And you pull together and you look after each other's children. You look after the elders. You take care of the farming. You circle your wagons. You have everything you need, and you make sure that you have everything you need, and you make sure everyone is taken care of. And this is your village. We look after each other. We don't want to lose anyone. We don't want to lose any group of people. We don't want anybody to suffer because, we all suffer. And if it's possible for this group of people to suffer, then it's possible for me to suffer. And so for me to not suffer, I have to make sure other people don't suffer, because otherwise, next time it's my turn. So you create a village. What are some of the components of a village? Well, these are very modern villages, right? We could have running water. If the states and the cities and the counties decide to keep the water infrastructure working, we could have running water. Really important for gardening, really important for sanitation, right? Cleanliness, bathing, cooking. One of the first things that happens during most disasters is the water becomes contaminated. So we could have fresh, reliable running water. That would be awesome. Yes, a big win. Big win for us. Running water. Who would have thunk it? If we could have sewer treatment, big win. Yes. We don't have to dig outhouses. We don't have to shit in our houses. We don't have to have unsanitary conditions and plagues and cholera and all the children dying from a disease. Yes, big win. If we can have electricity, winning. We are winning. We can have modern villages. What about internet? What about cell phones? Winning. Yes, somebody decided that was worth bringing forward. Somebody's maintaining the cell phone towers. Thank you, wherever you are. That anonymous person maintaining the cell phone towers, replacing that equipment, repairing that equipment, keeping the electricity flowing to the cell phone towers. Thank you. Yes. Modern villages. With internet, with running water, with electricity. Maybe it's grid electricity. Maybe it's locally generated. How do you generate electricity locally? Well, you have wind towers, you have solar panels, you have batteries for storage. Maybe you have a community battery, a big battery that someone brought in with a truck and they dropped it and said, here's your battery, enjoy. Do you have people in your community who can manage power? This is pretty big power now. Hundreds of volts going here and there and the other place. Can you do that? Does the city or the county help you with that? Do they come in and they bring in their experts, right? They got experts who are on staff. Why are they on staff? Are they being paid? Well, are they being paid in food? Maybe they just are just dedicated. Maybe they're just dedicated people who want it to work, want us to have the fresh water. Let's do the fresh water. Let's do the electricity. Let's do the sewer treatment. We're going to make this work. Well, they could do that. That's all human scale. It could be done. It's triage. We have to decide. We need this done. These are things we could lose if we're not careful. We don't want to lose these things. Make it happen. You can't have your car. You can't have your flights. You can't have your goods shipping around the world. You can't have your movement of money, your bank accounts, your 401k. You can't have your job. Those are DOA. There are other things you can have. You can have running water. You can have electricity. You can have cell phones. You can have internet. You can have one-room schoolhouses. You can have backyards full of food. You can have a village. It can be a modern village. It can be an absolutely fantastic fucking experience. but you're going to have to work for it. It's not a given. It could still be lost. In the absence of fossil fuels, all those things could be lost. You could have nothing. You could be living in a mud hut with no shoes, no clothing, no food but what you can scrounge out of the landfill. You could end up living in a mud hut, literal Stone Age existence. That's probably the default, by the way. That's probably the default answer, that they do nothing. Bystander effect. That the elites just walk by with their nose up in the sky and deedle, deedle, doddle, doddle, doddle. I'm okay. I've got mine. I've got my cruise ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I'm going to be fine. I don't see anything. I see nothing. Figure it out. You're on your own. La-di-la. They could do that. Some of them will absolutely do that. So, absolutely do that. Your local people are less likely to do that because they're living in your community. Okay. And if they don't make the water flow and the sewer go away and the electricity once in a while show up, then they don't have it either. Right. You see the incentive? The community operates at different levels. There's this village level, which is what, 50, 100, 250 people, right? Your Dunbar number, look up the Dunbar number. Small villages, I think they're technically called hamlets. The village is actually bigger. So you could have hamlets of people who are really working together closely, raising each other's children, taking care of each other's elders, bandaging each other's wounds, just the cycles of life, right? Planting, harvesting, storing food, building fences, protecting the animals, protecting the children, fighting off bandits, whatever, a hamlet, a group of people. And then there could be villages, which are bigger, or groups of hamlets, right? Hamlets that are maybe, quarter mile apart. It's more like a village now. And maybe the hamlets get together at sort of a central location. They have a farmer's market, right? They have a farmer's market. And then the farmer's market, it becomes a little more permanent. Now we have a bigger area. And pretty soon these 3 or 4 little hamlets that kind of got their shit together enough to have a farmer's market, all of a sudden now this is a village, right? And in the center of it is the farmer's market. People come every single day to trade the things they have in excess and to exchange for things that they don't have. And pretty soon, when you realize that there's not nearly enough eggs, or there's not nearly enough milk, or there's not nearly enough cheese, or there's not nearly enough wine, then people start planting grapes and making cheese and raising cattle and doing all the things. Once they realize there's a need, someone comes along and says, "Hey, I think I can do that." And they go on the internet, because we still have the internet, and they say, "How do you make cheese?" Click. And then they figure out how to make cheese. And now all they need is milk. And so we just need cattle. I mean, that means we need a pasture. And so I've got, I can get these dairy cows, and I can put them on this pasture. And now I have dairy, and now I can make cheese. And all of a sudden, one day, there's a cheese right showing up in the farmer's market. And people are like, "Oh my God, is that cheese? I haven't had a bit of cheese in a century, it feels to me like." And pretty soon, you're trading cheeses. And then there's a blacksmith somewhere in the community, and the blacksmith brings in wooden wheels, and the blacksmith brings in, utensils, knives, forks, spoons, bowls. And then there's a carpenter, and the carpenter brings chairs to the farmer's market. And all of a sudden, all these people with all these interests start doing things because there's a market, because there's a village, because there were hamlets, because there were people who circled their wagons and figured out what could be done. And it all starts with people knowing that it's human scale and it's human nature to help each other pull through. And from that basic instinct, all other things are possible. All things become possible. You had to first give up on the things that are impossible. The things that cannot be done had to be surrendered. You surrender the things that cannot go forward. You must surrender them, and you must surrender them at once, or they will drag you down. And if you let them drag you down, you will perish. And the people who surrender to reality are the ones that go forward. They are strong of spirit. They have clarity of mind. They accept reality. They accept the situation. They understand that if there's going to be any future, it's because we're all going to do this future thing together. And the people who can't wrap their head around any of that even all of that, then they perish. That's going to be a lot of people. And then there's the issue, well, how many people can we really feed in villages? How many people, how much food can we grow in our backyards? Is that enough to survive? Does everybody get to survive on that amount of food? Does the state, does the county have wheat fields that, they use the last of the fossil fuels, the tiny allotments left over from the failure of that whole energy supply? Do they use the last of the diesel to run combine harvesters to bring us the wheat we need to make flour, to make bread, other staples, corn, right? Soybeans. Do you know how to make tofu? I have a machine that makes tofu from soybeans. Do you? Maybe you don't like tofu, but when you've got nothing else, tofu is pretty damn nice. Do you have cornmeal? Can you make tortillas? Do you know how to make tortillas? Do you know how to make farina flour out of cornmeal? Do we have to raise corn to have corn? Does the state raise corn? Does the state have the big fields of corn and then run the combine harvesters through the fields and then distribute the corn to the villages and the hamlets so that those people have corn? And if you have 60 people in your hamlet, you get this much corn, you get this much wheat. And we can't make flour for you, we can't make cornmeal for you, but we get the raw materials. You have to figure it out. And if you haven't figured it out, then what that means is that somewhere there's a group of women, it's always women, right, who are grinding the corn on a rock with another rock, okay? And they're grinding the wheat berries on a rock with another rock to make the flour until someone very clever comes along and says, hey, we can make a mill. We just need millstones. And I think I have the exact, we can go to a cemetery and find the granite and the sandstone, and we'll make millstones out of these things. And then we'll be able to turn the millstones with some power source. I don't know. Maybe we could do the wind. We could make a windmill. And when the wind is blowing, we'll have the millstones and the wind veins go around, and there's a transmission mechanism and turns the millstones, and we put the corn and the flour down in the middle, and the cornmeal and the flour come out the sides, and all, and then you're not doing the rock on a rock thing. Okay, now we have a mill. Our little hamlet has a mill, and pretty soon all the other hamlets are bringing us their corn and their wheat berries, and we're grinding those things for them. Oh, but there's a small fee. We get to keep some of the flour, but that's okay because you wouldn't have had any flour or any cornmeal without our mill. And then you have a miller, and the miller needs a carpenter to help build the mill, and a blacksmith to help make the metal parts. Not many, but some, bearings and such like. This is all human scale. I don't know how to do these things. Oh, I absolutely know how to do these things. I know all about it. I've studied the Middle Ages. Ha ha ha. I've studied basic machines. I've seen Leonardo da Vinci's drawings of how to make wooden gears using pegs. Studied them closely. I know exactly how to do that. I know exactly what he was doing. Oh yeah, that'll work. Okay, fine. I can do that. I can make a mill, and I know where to get the millstones. And I know how to carve them from headstones. I can make millstones. I can make a mill. I can have flour and cornmeal and soy meal. And all I need is the raw materials, the wheat and the corn. And we can have the finished goods with a windmill that me and a bunch of people can make. Because we can do these. These are human scale. Humans have done these things for 10,000 years. We can do this. Can everybody do this? No. Will everybody be living in a modern village with internet and running water and a windmill with millstones? No. How many people get to do this? I don't know. My guess is most people won't even bother. Most people will just go to their doom, demanding. They're driving and they're flying, and they'll go to their doom, demanding their jobs and their money. And they'll go to their doom, waiting for Amazon Prime to deliver, and going to the Trader Joe's and the Target and the Home Depot and every place else and figuring, why are the shelves empty? No, no, no. Stamp my feet. Throw a tantrum. Where's my stuff? They'll go to their doom. Where's my stuff? You're doomed. That's just not working. That stuff came in DOA because we had to give up on fossil fuels. And without fossil fuels, you can't fly and drive and move your goods and move your money and have your job and, bananas from Ecuador. You couldn't do it. And why do we have to stop the fossil fuels? Who would ever do that? We have to do that because of global heating. And if we don't do it deliberately, it will be done unto us. It is over. It's done. We are now in a disaster. It's a slow-moving disaster, like a slow-moving train wreck, like the Titanic hitting the iceberg and taking 6 hours to sink. Yeah, it's a slow-moving disaster. But let me tell you, it's a disaster, and I'm not the only one saying it. Lots of people in my position, engineers, scientists, and very, very, very few politicians know what's coming because it's already here. And I don't know how much time you've got to figure out how you're going to reorganize your life around not having fossil fuels, but you better start figuring it out. And the first thing you have to do is stop burning fossil fuels and see how your life falls out. See how your life reorganizes itself around, I can't just drive myself down to Taco Bell and get a burrito. Can't just drive myself down to Whole Foods and get organic strawberries from, Nevada. What are you going to do? There's going to be some things that just flat go away. There's going to be some things that you can save, like your family, if you take a defensive posture now and get ahead of that. Get out in front of that. You can do that. That's human skill. And then there's going to be a bunch of other things, and it's most of the things that you and your community and your local government and I don't know who all is going to have to work hard and fight hard to keep them. You like your running water, you like your sewer treatment, you like your internet, you like your cell phone, you like your field crops like your corn and your wheat. You like that? You like those things? Do you? You like that? You like sacks of flour and sugar and salt and yeast, and you want to be able to make bread? You have a bread maker? Can you do that? You like those things? Do you have those things? No? Yes? Figure it out. Now's the time to figure that out. Now's the time to put the pressure on your local people, your local government, your city government, your county government. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now is the time. Now, right now, do it. Jump, bitch, do it. Dance, monkey, do it. Now's the time. Hard decisions, triage, difficult. You're not ready for that. You don't have the training for that. You don't know what that's going to feel like. And some people are not going to make it. Who are those people? Oh, man. Oh, boy. The last time people lived without fossil fuels would have been about the year 1700. We were already cutting down all the forests in Europe and, probably China too. So we were already really, really deep into screwing up. But about then, there was about, 600 million people on Earth, the whole of Earth. And we were plowing the fields with oxen, and we had the vineyards, and we made our own wine, and we had the bees for honey, and we had some ships that could move some things around just a little bit, and there were trading caravans. They brought silks and dates and oranges, and there was a little bit going on, and some people had more than others, but everybody had a little bit. There were famines occasionally and plagues, and it wasn't the best, but in about the year 1700, we sort of had it figured out. And there was 800 million people at most. That's a round figure because 800 million people is 1% of the current human population. 1%. 8,000 million people currently live on Earth. and everything they eat and everything they drink and everything they see and everything they breathe and everything they do and everything they know and everything that goes past their house and everything that's in their house and everything that makes up their house and everything that makes up their life and their education and their job and their families and their television and their radio and their internet, all that is dependent on fossil fuels. All of it. Even people that live in villages have some of those things, and it's all dependent on fossil fuels. So when we did not have fossil fuels, the earth could sustain maybe 800 million people without fossil fuels. That's 1% of the current population. Because there's 8,000 million people. 8,000 million. Maybe it's 10%. 8,000 million. 8,000 million. Yeah, maybe that's 10% of the current population. 8,000 million, 800 million. Maybe we could support 800 million, maybe half of that. Maybe even less than half without fossil fuels. Because the world is not pristine today. Right? Right here in the South Bay, we grew all the food for the Bay Area. And now it's all under asphalt and concrete. Well, what are you going to do about that? How are people going to feed themselves? All the farmland is under asphalt and concrete. Holy moly. Well, we got to change that somehow. We got to find farmland somewhere. Yeah. Good luck. When the world was young, when we hadn't impacted it, when we hadn't polluted the rivers, when we hadn't paved over the land, we could support 400 million people, 800 million people, not 8,000 million as we have today. So that's a lot of people are not going to have food, clothing, and shelter because we can't do it. We can't do it. Some of those people, it's not going to be their fault that they don't have food, clothing, and shelter. Some of those people will never understand what hit them. And some of those people will make the hard choices. They will bear down. They will circle their wagons. They will be where they're supposed to be with whom they're supposed to be with. And they will make the tough decisions, and they will give up on the things that arrive DOA, and they will salvage the things that can be salvaged, and they'll work with their local governments to make sure that basic services can be provided, universal basic services, and they'll create new forms of villages, and they'll recreate village life, and they'll circle their wagons, and they'll build actual fences, and they'll recreate pasture, and they'll put the horses and the cattle out, and the sheep and the dairy cows, and they'll have basic things, and they'll have blacksmiths, and they'll have carpenters, and they'll be able to, in a local fashion, do all the things. Do the things. They'll do the things in a local way without fossil fuels. And that is what I call village life. It'd be great if we could have running water and sanitary conditions. It'd be great if we could have the internet. Wow. We created all those things with fossil fuels. Can we keep them without fossil fuels? I don't know. That's a question we're going to have to answer. That's that thing, that triage thing that's right in the middle. It's not a giveaway. And it's not dead on arrival necessarily. It's something we could figure out, maybe. Working together, working with government, trying to preserve some things. Let's keep the water flowing and the electricity. Like to have cell phones. Make sure there's cell phone towers. Even if they only run one day a week, whatever it takes. We could figure that part out, that middle part that seems kind of sketchy right now to me. Could we do it? I don't know. Somebody might. Somebody could. Will I do that? Will they do that? Will someone do that? Will someone fix this? Will someone keep this working? Will there be tap water? Can I turn the tap on and have the water come out and have it be clean and not brown and black? Okay, will there be tap water? I don't know. It's could be figured out. Someone could figure that out. I'd like for someone to figure that out. Please figure that out. Who is that person? Who is that group? Is that my local government? Is that my state government? Is that my county government? I don't know. Figure it out. We need these things. And I think if we have basic services, we can muddle through with the rest of it. And it might be a pretty nice life, folks. It could be. It could be a good life. Nice things happening. Families, communities, right? Rituals, cycles of life, birthing, dying, growing old, right? Could be worse for 90% of humanity that goes over the Seneca Cliff along with the fossil fuels. It could be lethal. How do you be part of the not dying part? How do you not arrive DOA? I think that's the question. So that's your homework assignment. Give some thought to that. How are you going to get yourself off of fossil fuels? How are you going to survive without fossil fuels? How can your community come together in a disaster that never stops? And what parts can you manage without fossil fuels? What parts are dead on arrival? And what parts are going to take a lot of work, a lot of figuring, a lot of planning, some luck, some foresight probably. What parts can we pull together? How are we going to pull this? Who can do this? Can I do this? Can my neighbor do this? Can we do this together? What parts can we do? What parts can we not do? What parts do we need help with? That's your homework. That's your life. That's your life, my friend. That's the rest of your life. And one of these days, they're going to shut it off. They're going to have to shut off the fossil fuels. They're talking about it. They're hemming and they're hawing about it. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be bad. People are going to die. People are going to get lost. We're going to lose civilization. We're going to lose jobs. We're going to lose the economy. Man, I don't know, but they got to do it. They got to do it. I'm telling you, they got to do it. And because they got to do it, it will be done. And you think about that. What happens to you and yours when that day comes? That day is coming.